Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you are watching this. This is Sam Prentice Makes Things Happen. I'm Sam Prentice, back once again making it happen, and it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas everywhere I go. And today we're looking at how I put together a Christmas light show, and how, if you live in the UK or Europe, how you can put together a Christmas light show. So stay tuned and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the like button if you should wish to. Let's get on to it.
2021 is going to be a great year for UK holiday lighting. A company based in the UK called Build a Light Show is now supplying everything you'll need to take your holiday show to the next level. But that's not all. They are also CNC cutting Coro props in the UK, which means it's even easier to get started. And you'll want to get started early, as there's a lot to learn. In this video, I'm going to be going through the basics on how to get you started, what kind of equipment you're going to need, what groups you're going to need to join, and who the key people are within the UK industry. Then towards the end of the video, we're going to be speaking with Xtremesequences about xLights and how to create this kind of magic on your home. So let's get started. Okay, so before we go any further, there are three things I wanted to mention. One, why? Well, I've always really admired the Chevy Chase National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and why not? I wanted to have an awesome Christmas light show, and this enabled me to do that very simply and easily. Number two, my next door neighbour last year had more lights than I did. Here's a little video of that. Number three, don't forget to subscribe to this video and hit that notification bell for new videos when they come up. Okay, let's start at the very beginning. The thing that you're going to need the most of, probably if you're doing a huge light display, is going to be RGB pixels. So red, green and blue pixels. These ones have a JST connection on each end, male and female, and then you also have two leads on each end, which are for power injection for positive and negative. So by the time you start at 12 volt, the likelihood by the time you get to the end of the string, it's going to be less than 12 because of the pixels that are already lit up in the boards and everything. So that's something certainly to consider. The next thing you're going to need is props. Is the next thing. So this is one of the props that I didn't manage to use this year. This is a singing face bulb. The mouth will basically move to the beat of the music, or to somebody singing, or whatever it might be. Or if I decide to create something where I'm actually talking, or the prop is going to be talking, I can do various things with this, which is pretty good. The eyes blink and all that kind of stuff. Now, the makeup of this is very much Coro board, which has been cut by Build a Light Show, and the back here is basically the configuration of the wiring. Now, the way you find the configuration of the wiring out is via xLights in the prop part. I'll go on and show you that a little bit later on. But essentially, it's male and female JST connectors. They plug into one another. You start at the very bottom. This is number one, and you end up around about 150 odds, somewhere inside of here. But as I say, this is one of the ones that I didn't use this year. Also, I bought a lot of these stars as well. And I think the main thing you've really got to consider is when you're buying props is, are they going to be multi-use? So this is a big thing for me. If I'm doing a Halloween show and a Christmas show, is a star necessarily the best thing to buy for both shows, or are the stars just going to come out for the Christmas show? So something certainly to consider with that. And of course, the other thing is things like big pixel trees. You're going to be using 2,500. I've used 2,500 pixels on my tree this year. So, you know, if I'm going to go 4,000, I'm probably not going to use that for a Halloween show. So it's just something to consider. So back this time last year, I found myself looking at pixelcontroller.com, looking at the Falcon F16 V6 pixel controller. They then put me on to Build a Light Show, which is where I bought all my pixels and controllers, and of course props from as well. So definitely check those guys out. There are a number of different boards on there. So for instance, if you're looking for a Falcon Pi, so you can plug this into your Raspberry Pi, and of course the Falcon F48. Now, what I will say, the RGB pixels are relatively cheap, especially when you consider if you do try and order any of this stuff from China, there is probably no comeback. So at least you're going to be dealing with a UK company that's going to be able to assist you and help you and deal with the problems if you come across any of them. And also, these are properly rated as well, so they're built for Build a Light Show. They're not using cheap components. So as I say, buildalightshow.com is definitely going to be the place to go for your pixel needs. I know we already briefly touched on props, but Build a Light Show, as I say, do CNC cut all the Coro boards in the UK now, which is something that's only really been available in the US before. And anything from Gilbert Engineering, if you head over to the Gilbert Engineering website and see anything that you like that's not listed on the Build a Light Show site, then they will cut that for you. And this is especially true when it comes to big stars or flakes. And you'll notice as well, I've got the 7.5 foot flake on my roof line at the moment. This is a star that I absolutely love, But the pixel count is well over 2,000 pixels, and it is an absolute beast of a star. But I'd love to display this on my house, so you never know what might happen at Christmas. Who knows? But the 7.5-foot star that I've got, and again, this all gives you the information that you're going to need. All you need to do is click on that. It'll tell you that there's 978 pixels that's going to be needed for that. And again, it's a good estimation on what you're going to need to work out on your show. So, and you can draw all this on using xLights and stuff as well. So to close this off, I only had to power inject into that 7.5-foot flake twice. Email Build a Light Show, help at Build a Light Show if you can't see anything that you want to buy on their site, but you can see it on Gilbert Engineering. I'm sure they'll be happy to hear from you. Let's get cracking with the software, which is called xLights. xLights is a package that basically sequences LED lights to your house, and I'll quickly go through how this all works. These are my two F16 Falcon F16s, which we talked about earlier. So I downloaded Hover to my iPhone, which I used to scan my entire house. I emailed it to the app company, and I'll put a link in the description for them. And basically, they 3D rendered my whole house for me, which is nice of them. And this is it. So all you need to do, and I say all you need to do with a kind of pinch of salt here, I suppose, is input your house and then put your props onto it. Now, that's easier said than done because it takes a long time to do this. And in addition to that, of course, each of these have an individual number of pixels and channels and universes and all that kind of crazy stuff. And the recent couple of versions of xLights, they have made it slightly easier, so you can now visualize exactly what's going on within your show and where everything's assigned to. And as you can see on the F16 here, it's got 16 ports on each of these, and you can put just over 1,000 pixels on each of these. So I've been having a lot of fun with that, and as you can see, all these are addressed to different ports. And back here we go. So this is my house. This is how we've managed to put this all together, and it's a bit of a labour of love. It takes a little bit of time to learn how to actually put everything together, and I've lost a couple of things down here due to the fact that I just had an extra couple of things that I didn't want to have on there. So if we go over to the sequencer real quick, I'll just show you very quickly how to put a show together, and just give you kind of some effects on how this all works. Now, the easiest effect, should I say, is probably going to be this rainbow color up here. So what I'll do is I'll look for my group here, which will probably have all props, no tree. There we go. And I'll just pop that straight into there. And that basically gives you a rainbow color across the whole of your matrix and house display, which, you know, kind of looks okay, I suppose, if that's your thing. Again, it just goes to show sort of how easy a lot of this stuff is. Kind of drag and drop. It can be reasonably easy to sequence, dependent on who you are and who you speak to, of course, but there's a ton of different options on here, which makes it really cool to you know, just sort of play around with, and you've got a load of random things that you can sort of mess about with. Works very much in the same way as a video package, so you'd have your sound file up here, or not, as the case may be, and then you can basically assign different effects to different groups. You don't have to have it as a group, you can have them singly as well. So if I get rid of that and say that I've got circle 2 here, which is one of the ones that's on the side here, and I want to put, I don't know, this one on here, I can basically turn this round, and that's here, and that would be the effect, which I doubt I would ever use. Maybe something a bit slower. But there are a ton of effects that you can basically use inside of this. So that is how you do that. So this hobby is much bigger than being able to squeeze it all and condense it into a 10-minute video. But this is very much the basics. So what I've run on my show is 2 Falcon F16s. I've got 5 Meanwell power supplies running at 12 volt. I've got a couple of network cables running from point to point because I have a Falcon at the front of the house and I have a Falcon at the rear of the house. The Falcon at the rear does a lot of the props to do with the side of the house, the reef at the front, the mega tree, and at the front it's pretty much everything else. So an even balance is definitely what you're going to need. in next year's show, I'm going to try and double the pixel capacity. So we're going to be looking at around about 20,000 pixels. And on top of that, I want to double the size of the mega tree. And at the moment, it's around about sort of 8 to 10 feet with a 6-foot base. I want to go 12 foot on the base and obviously double the height as well, which means doubling the pixels. So if I'm running 2,000 pixels on just the tree at the moment, that's going to be 4,000 pixels and the extensions and all the rest of it. So there's a whole ton of power requirements that are going to be needed to be worked out on that. Again, it is relatively simple. There are a load of different websites out there that can look at things like how to configure a mega tree, what your power requirement generally is going to be. But sound advice here, get yourself a decent multimeter and actually test those yourself, because it will save you a lot of hard work in the long run. Now, all the links can be found in the description at the bottom of this video, but stay tuned. Coming up is Ron Howard from Xtremesequences. Another notable website I also would suggest you look at is a company called Panels Are Us. Is set up by a chap called Greg. He's a really nice chap, and I certainly will be ordering some of these P5 panels at my next available opportunity. They are big light show panels, basically use a Raspberry Pi to output to, and you can have various different images on your display. This is very much an add-on for your sequences already, and again, it goes hand in hand with the rest of this stuff. So Xtremesequences, Build a Light Show, you know, these guys are all kind of working together to make your show so much better. But you'll be looking at things like where it says rock here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to play this, but we'll give it a go. So again, the panels are stacked and put into a matrix, which basically acts as a television, and you can output via HDMI to this panel, or these groups of panels, should I say, in order to display things like lyrics and videos, of course. And at this point, it's where Greg and another hobby of mine, 3D printing, comes full circle, because he also produces a lot of these little 3D printed parts that can be used on these matrices and the P5 panels to join them all together. So again, you know, this hobby is, it goes round in full circles: CNC cutting, electronics, and obviously 3D printing. Also, Greg also sells the board, so this is a complete solution here. You can also buy the Meanwhile power supplies direct from him as well. He will test it and ship it and do whatever you need to do. And he's been a massive help for me, especially with whole display on a Raspberry Pi this year. He was one of the fundamental people that helped me early on to get my configuration correct. So finally, before we come on to the mighty morphing Ron Howard from Xtremesequences, I wanted to show you a page that I've been part of called the European Light Fanatics, or ELF for short. They hold the key to your success, certainly for the UK and Europe builders. They understand exactly what you're going through. They have a very interesting training package that is free of charge to join. It's on Zoom. You basically just tune in, and any of the problems that you're going through on how to set up a show. Ron Howard normally hosts all this kind of stuff, and he goes through how to actually build your house for the very first time on xLights, and how to use xLights. It's been incredible, but it has taken a whole year of training for us to really kind of understand as a new person on how to do this. But as I say, there are a load of people on here. They're all very, very cool individuals, and you know, I'd certainly suggest that you give it a join. This is looking pretty interesting. Again, you know, this kind of merge of 3D printing with this hobby is certainly something that I've been looking at for a while. But it will show you all these different things on how people are configuring things. This was the storm from the other night and what kind of damage people got. Nothing too badly, actually, which was pretty damn good. That looks very much like mine, but it's not. And if you're not in the UK, and in fact you're in the US or elsewhere, Ron also has the Xtremesequences Sequence Syndicate, which I believe is also very, very similar to this, but he gets drunk and yeah, just talks to a lot of Americans and stuff. So wherever you are in the world, there is something for you. I can guarantee that at the very least. Right, now introducing my first guest of this video, in fact only guest of this video, it is Mr. Ron Howard. But not that Ron Howard, right?
Not that Ron Howard.
No, indeed. Well, Ron, you know, you're super, super famous in the lighting show arena at the moment. And, you know, coming into this as a new guy, my first year of doing lighting, performance, xLights, whatever you want to call it, there's a group of people, it's you and various other people that are on the Thursday night training session. And what I found with the group is that you guys have all been very welcoming. All colors, creeds, difference of opinion, different ways of doing things, different learning approaches, and you've done a sterling job, I have to say, first and foremost, of actually getting me over the line, because this is something that I've kind of dipped in and out of as the year has gone on, or certainly the last sort of 10 months. So first and foremost, Ron, thank you very much for being there, because I don't think I would have got the show done without you and various other people within the group. But I don't know anybody outside of the XLights arena that we're in. So this bit that I'm doing with you and Jim and Greg and all those kinds of guys, that's kind of my sort of XLights family. But you're not the originator of XLights. You're a guy that's basically given up everything, and this is now your job, Xtremesequencing. Is that right?
That is. It's a double-edged sword. It's a blessing and a curse at the same time, and I sort of like that. In 2015, I started with Lightorama, like a lot of people. Wasn't really sure what I was doing. I was searching the websites, trying to find how to animate my show, and I found some lights at Target, and it was sort of a hot mess. Things didn't work. I took them all back, and I went online, and I started searching, and I found Lightorama. I put it on my show, and at the end of that year in 2015, I felt like I could do more. I felt like I wasn't telling a story with the lights, and I stumbled upon xLights, which was an open-based software, and sort of the rest is history. I had no idea I was going to take off and learn it the way I did, and I had no idea I had any ability to make lights dance to music. That was new for me. I'm a musician, but it doesn't translate the same way as a drummer.
I didn't know that, because I knew that, to do the stuff that you do and these types of sequences, you have to have, an artistic front. Let's be fair. And I think you've certainly got that. Undoubtedly, you've got that with the sequences that you put out, and they are, in my opinion, a cut above the rest. And I've seen lots of different sequences, and I've bought other sequences from other providers, and even the free ones and things like that. But your ones, I think it's important first and foremost for people to understand that this is your job. So what they are buying from you is your time. And with most things, I think that sometimes that might be a little bit of a blurred line, like, oh, I can do it, and you end up with, crap. Let's put it, into that kind of basis, or the best that you possibly can do. Whereas your sequences, and what I really love about them is, things like Mother of All Reefs, they're just there. When I go to import, click, 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 click. I don't have to be a superstar sequencer to run with your sequences, because you've already done all the hard work. It's already there, and it's very, very easy to understand. Why is that? How have you got how much tweaking have you had to do to get to that point?
A lot. When I first started, there were not a lot of sequencers to look at out there where I was blown away by the work. Lilia Megan, which was the wife at the time of Sean Megan, was the only person sequencing at a level that I felt was really interesting, and sort of was the catalyst in me trying to figure out what they were doing and how to push the boundaries on that. And she was the only one selling sequences at the time. So I had to kiss the Godfather's hand and get the blessing to be able to sell sequences that were xLights sequences. And it was just sort of a respect thing back in 2016-ish, certainly through the rest of it. And, my only job really is to try to help people give the best show they can for their communities, for their friends and families. And this year of all years, we need it more than ever. And it's to lighten the load. I mean, let's face it, when you start this hobby, there's a lot to learn. And by the time you get to the point where you feel comfortable turning on a controller and the lights turn on for the first time, you're like, oh my gosh, this is it. And then you have to realize you've got to put something to music. You've got to tell some type of story, or otherwise you end up with another static display. That becomes a stumbling block for so many. It's difficult to figure out in your head what you're trying to translate with movements from a screen in 2D or 3D to the grand picture around your house. And how do I use all these buttons? How do I use these effects? And it's daunting. I mean, seriously, in this chair, I sat for years learning how to use the software, year over year, pushing myself. And it's a hard expectation, because most people have lives. They have jobs and families and a life. Whereas I have this job. I love it, but it does take a lot of time. And so if I could be that provider for something that's difficult for other people, then I feel like I'm doing a good deed.
Absolutely. Yeah, you certainly are. And I mean, this is, festive lighting for you 24/7, 12 months of the year, and, I guess there's a certain amount of irony, we get through to New Year's, bang, we're starting again. And it's the next round of teaching, because you teach how to use xLights, how to set your show up. And the site is called ELF, so European Light Fanatics, that I'm part of. You've got your own set of stuff as well that's sort of US and worldwide based. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, I have a Facebook group called Xtremesequences Syndicate. Yeah. About 1,700 members. Not too many. It's not overcrowded to the point it's hard to manage, but I often do worry about it getting too big for itself. It's a very relaxed atmosphere, and we don't really have any rules. We have an unspoken rule, and that's sort of, to put it in mild terms, don't be a jackass. And it seems to work. I think adults want to be treated like adults, and people want to share without the feeling that they're going to be scrutinized for asking a question that might have been asked the day before. I don't believe in doing that. Ask it again. Someone's going to answer it. And if it bothers you enough, ignore the question and move on. And I think this hobby creates a lot of tension for people, especially during game season, which is between September and December. And I think you have to be empathetic to people that are new in this hobby. It's not a super easy hobby, as you may know. It takes quite a bit of dedication, and it's not a cheap hobby. It's not uncommon for a first-time show to start with 500 to 1,000 pixels, and the next year they're at 5,000, 10,000 pixels. That's how it consumes you.
Yeah. So how many pixels are you at the moment on your display?
About 40,000.
Wow.
We would be at 45,000, but I don't think Rose and I are going to put the rest of the props out. I think we're good for this year. It's a hard balance, man, running the business and trying to have your own show for Halloween and Christmas. It takes a lot.
What I found was quite interesting. I had another probably 3,000 odd pixels that could have gone up, and I don't really have space, but I sort of do have space. I could have found where I was going to put them, but each it's a learning curve. This again, each prop you put on, in addition, you have to then resequence. You have to hit the button again. There's a little bit of messing around to do with it, but then you start picking up faults, like maybe you've got the cables are too long. Or maybe, there's a bunch of different things, or voltage or power supplies or whatever it might be. And it's interesting because I thought, well, this will take me 5 or 10 minutes just to do this bit. And it took a day. And I don't have that amount of time, and I say this a lot, time is my most valuable commodity. It's not the same for everybody, but having that kind of time to sit there for a day and try and work out why on earth this prop isn't working, I don't really have the time for that. So, the Thursday night training that you guys do was hugely beneficial. And, I started off and I had a notepad and I was writing everything down about how many pixels and how many channels and how many this, how many that, And, what I found is actually I don't use that at all now. I know because you guys are incredible teachers, and the way that the structure of that training goes, it enables you, I think, to fault find. And if you're that way inclined, great. But then in addition to that, the group is very, very interesting in the fact that everybody's there, very, very helpful. Greg, for instance, helped me with the Falcon Pi player. You've helped me with various things with sequences. Jim's helped me a ton of times with various different things, and visiting him at Build a Light show, and picking up props and trying to work on things and bits and pieces like that as well. You guys are incredibly forgiving on that. And if you're not an expert in electronics, if you're not that way inclined to build mega trees, there are people inside of this group that are there almost either to assist you or to potentially sell you a product, which is fantastic as well. And you don't always see that in groups. A lot of people are, of the opinion that they want to try and keep all the information to themselves. But, you do full training. You've taught a hell of a lot of stuff. And a lot of this is available on your website. And, how to do this. This is how I do it. Sure. You can do it too. But if you don't have the time, and as I said, time is a massively valuable commodity. So you're selling those sequences was great for me because I look like I'm the nuts all of a sudden as people would walking past say that, I've got these great videos on my Ring doorbell. This guy's an engineer. This guy's an electrician. Isn't this fantastic? I feel seasick. All these different things that people come out with, and you go out there, and I think the word that's most used is, this is amazing, amazing, amazing. And it constantly, and it's that step above going to Costco or going to Walmart or wherever you decide to get your lights from. And, those things are crap. If you're buying LED lights from these superstores that cost you $9.99, you plug them in, you're not really getting it, not really seeing the benefit in that. Now, that's my opinion, of course.
Sure.
I see this as a bit more of a, I'm that guy now on my street. I'm the only one in my village that's got this kind of light show. No one else has got this kind of stuff going on. And now I've sort of set myself up really, I guess, for, where do we go from? So my show this year was 12,500 pixels. So I know now that Build a Light Show are going to be taking my money, without question. Sure. Because I'm going to have to
show next year.
For next year. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm excited to see what you do next year. It's it's funny thing because you hit on talking about the elders of the group, Jim Ennis and Panel Daddy. I gave Greg Macri the name Panel Daddy, and maybe we'll change that to P Daddy. We'll see how he feels. But all of these folks in the first year, we've been training for 2 years in Europe. All of these folks were brand new to it, so I was able to introduce sort of xLights and methods and strategies for xLights, and we kept it very basic and very regimented. The first year, not so much regimented because we're feeling the waters. We're trying to figure out which way to take the best approach. But this last year was very, very regimented in, this is what we're going to study. This is the weekly outline for the new folks, for the people trying to expand at a higher level. And we were very very committed to that, and the elders really stepped up. I remember explaining some of this stuff to Greg Macri the first time 2 years ago, and everybody was new to it, so it was a blank slate. And the refreshing thing about the ELF group is everyone's desire to learn. Yep. Everybody was so committed. Everyone showed up, as you said. Everybody asked wonderful questions, and people began to trust that no question is a dumb question. Every question has merit, and just because the guy next to you may have the answer and you don't, doesn't make it okay for you not to ask it. And this is where trust comes in. Jim Ennis and I talked about this a great deal when we built the website or the group and developed the training. We really wanted to slowly grow this in Europe, and we didn't expect it to grow as fast as it has.
Yeah,
really.
And I think, this 2021 season, I think that is going to be, the making for Build a Light Show and, other vendors as well.
Sure.
And the fact that you guys are the only ones that I certainly could see, I went out and looked at the marketplace and said, where can I buy this kit from? And I think I spoke to the guy at the Pixel Controller website who sells the Falcons, and he said, if you're in the UK, this is the company. Spoke to Jim, and Jim is, he doesn't suffer fools, right? Let's be fair. He's very matter of fact. And even in last week's meeting where Julian was talking about the stuff that he'd bought, Jim had told him not to, and it had kind of gone, 40 pixels, etc., etc. And Jim had told me some stuff like, you want 1 inch spacing, you want this, you want that. And I was just like, yeah, who is this guy? Good God, he's on my back. He's telling me this, that, and the other. But the bugger was right. He really was right. And I'm glad I did take his advice, and it is solid advice. And again, you don't know what you don't know. And I think that's prudent, especially when you're coming into a new hobby. So what is xLights?
What is xLights? The Swiss Army knife of sequencing is what I refer to it as. I will tell people, I said, the best thing about xLights is it could do everything. And the worst thing about xLights is it could do everything. And it really is a wonderful open source platform for making lights move to music and or video. And it has grown so much over the years. It's hard to keep up if you're one of these seasonal hobbyists where your show ends January 1, 2, 3, or 4, and then you decide to come back into it somewhere around September or October. You have missed the boat on a lot of things. It's really difficult to catch back up. The interface may have changed. They typically roll out updates every 1 to 2 weeks. We're on .55 now, so 2020 .55. And with open source, there are caveats. There are bug fixes that might fix one thing but break 2 others, and you have to roll with it. And you have to listen to people who are early adopters of the software updates. I'm one of these. I'll early adopter, I should say. I'll roll something out and see what it does, and try to warn others if I think there's a problem with it, and say, hold back, let's wait to another version. This broke this, so stay where you're at, because some of these can have pretty significant consequences if you don't know what you're doing. And this is why training is so important. And as you've seen this year, there are many issues happening, I would say more on the US side, with shows having problems, glitches, flickering, lag, and virtually none of this on the European side. Now, there's a distinctive difference in the size between each side of the pond, but the reality is we taught one way, and that was to use universal addressing on the European side, and we made that, it needs to be this way. We'll address other ways of doing it, and quickly I adopted the what I call the auto magic way of using xLights, to use auto layouts and auto sizes, and let xLights sort of do the math for me. And while it is interesting and has some strong merits, there are repercussions for such automation. And if you can't think on your feet, you might not be able to troubleshoot. And I think hopefully there was a big lesson learned this year for developers in things that can go bump. And so I think we'll stick to that strategy next year, and we'll introduce slowly as it improves other ways of working with xLights. It's all encompassing.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, as I say, on the training side, it did seem quite complicated. I've got my head around it now, and everything changed again. So it was like, okay, now what do we do? And now I got this Raspberry Pi plan. Now I need to FPP upload and do all this other kind of crazy stuff. And I haven't done that before, and I don't really know what I'm doing. Really grasping it and getting your head around this whole, calamity of xLights. It's sort of it's quite a brain melt. Ron, tell me, what was your first sequence that you ever did?
I think the first sequence I had ever done, let's see, that would have been Curse of the Ice Queen, way back in early 2016. And I saw Lilia's Let It Go, and I thought, I want to do something similar, but I want to put my twist on it. And so Let It Go was the sort of breakout sequence for me, where people started asking, what are you going to sell that for? And I thought, what do you mean sell it for? That's crazy. And then Don't Stop the Santa Man was huge. It had all these images and told a story. And I remember David Pitts, who owns Falcon Controllers, reached out to me. He goes, hey Ron, this guy, his name is John, he really wants to buy the sequence. He said you haven't got back to him. Could you please get back to him? And he wants to buy that sequence from you. Okay, man, is that cool? I was like, what is going on here? And so I started sort of just selling these sequences, and then I built a little website, and then it just grew. And I was still working selling enterprise content management at the time, and I went to another company, and that company was checking out and sort of working from home, and I had a lot of time, so I was learning xLights, and next thing you know, it grew. For now 3 years, this is all I do. This is my full-time job. This is what pays the bills and, provides food for the family. And I consider myself very fortunate, very blessed to be able to do something I love so much and provide sequences and consultation and support, and love working with the European group. ELF has been phenomenal. There's a distinctive difference between working on the US side and working on the European side. And I have to be careful how I say this, But while we all speak the same language, it's very different. And I love that about it. And, I love Jim Ennis. He's a great guy. I mean, he's such a visionary, and he puts his heart into everything. And when you said he suffers no fools, you aren't kidding. He's a very intelligent man, and also has a lot of artistic value that I don't know if a lot of people pick up on. He's a huge fan of orchestral music, and he knows when he sees something if it looks right or if it doesn't. He just intuitively knows what's right and what's wrong, and so he's a good resource for what we're. The only time he was wrong, and he'll love me for this, is when he declared that panel matrices were evil and it should only be pixel matrices. And I argued with him. He flew me out, and I argued with him there. And now you see most of Europe embracing the P5 panels. So, Jim, you might have been wrong.
Yeah, whatever. Sounds like it. I'll be looking at that, I think, coming into the new season. Let me ask you this question then. What is your most favorite song stroke sequence?
Gosh, it's sort of like asking who is your favorite child. It's sort of really, there's so many different ones that have unique palettes, but there is one, and I don't know if many people will get this. One of the last sequences that I sequenced for myself that was purely selfish was Sound of Silence by Disturbed.
Right.
It was during a time where politics were raging and people were somewhat unsettled. And this was in 2016, I believe. No. Yeah, end of 2016, 2017. And I just needed to express myself, and that song is so strong, and I use some visuals in it that aren't so Christmassy, but it's sort of my way. And I remember a college student standing outside. We were in the cold, and we were talking. He goes, "Is this your home?" And I said, "It is." And the song was playing, and he says, "It's very interesting sequence here. It looks like this was a very emotionally motivated sequence." And I said, "Wow, I think he gets it." And I said, "Well, if you had to say one word, what word would describe it? What feeling do you get from it?" He goes, "Greed." And I went, wow, he got it. He killed it, just knew it. And probably 9 out of 10 would never ever pick up on that, because they're sort of expecting to be entertained, where this guy was very into knowing what the sequence was trying to say. And I do that with a lot of sequences. You don't always know what they're trying to mean, and sometimes that's okay with me. But as long as your audience is entertained, that's what matters most.
Absolutely. So when it comes down to, your next sequence that you're going to sell, how do you come up with that? Is it kind of down to a lot of people going, "Hey, do this," or is it a case of you just going, "Actually, I really like this song and I'm going to do what I want to do"?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and you might be surprised by the answer. In 2019, probably 95% of the sequences were custom commissioned sequences, where someone says, "I'd really like to do this Skrillex song for my home in Australia," actually Tasmania. And we'd set the terms and the price, and we would agree that this would be mapped to my home and put into the store and be available for members and purchases. And they were great. Otherwise, the price was a lot more. And so that is how the portfolio grew for a couple of years. This last year, I relied a little bit less on that, and I put some of my own out there. Too Much Time on My Hands was motivated. The song by Styx was motivated by COVID-19. We all had a lot of time on our hands, it seemed like, and certainly saved lives. The sequence I did that raised money for NHS and also U.S. healthcare. I love doing these things to raise money for causes. And this year, for 2021, I'm going to be putting a poll out and letting people choose some Halloween and Christmas songs. The challenge with that is I might have a high percentage of people wanting some type of dubstep, and then you've got 40-50% going, "Oh no, not another one of those." But for the most part, people seem to really like that.
Yeah, the Mr. Grinch that you did, you know, there's a kind of metal track to that, so it kind of it struck. You know, I've got Skrillex, I've got a couple of the other ones that are kind of on the edge there, but the Mr. Grinch one, people seem to really like that, and it is rocky, and it is, you know, it is a little bit in your face. They like it, and again, you know, I said this to you on Halloween about the Halloween shows. You've got to play to your audience. It's all right having this thing. You know, a lot of people are saying to me as well, hey, this really must suck for you because you're indoors, we're out here, you're not even seeing your show. But then the gratification is that actually I built the show, I put it together, and I've sequenced it as an engineer. You've sequenced it. I've bought the sequence, whatever. But, you know, ultimately we managed to sort of get it where it needed to be for them to enjoy it. So, which is nice. But, you know, I've spent the money, so, you know.
You know, it's funny. Recently, some people were comparing likes on their Facebook pages for the people liking their shows, and you know, apparently that's a barometer of success for most things in life. How many likes you get, and I told them, I said, well, while you are both arguing over who's got the most likes, I have millions, because anyone that's using my sequence out there and they've got all these hits. I think a like for you is a like for me. And I said, yeah, I think it's brilliant. And I do recommend, you know, it's funny. Some people will say, well, you know, I don't actually sequence this. I didn't do this. You know, I just put the lights up. And I always tell people, don't do that. Just tell them you did. Just tell them it's your show. You did it. They don't need to know the inner workings. It's not important. But then I'll see somebody on the news and they're like, yeah, you know, it took me 80 hours to sequence this. And then I go, really?
Yeah, you can't lie to that. You can't lie about that. So, Ron, give me, what's the tips and advice that you would give for somebody that's starting out brand new today? They've seen this video, they're understanding what Xtremesequences is, they're understanding what Build a Light Show is, they're understanding that there's a group that they can go and do this training. Yeah. How does that work?
Start early. Start looking at videos that excite you with the light shows and start taking notes. Think about how you would envision your show and get involved in the groups very quickly. Training is going to start in January with ELF, and it's going to be a busy year. Everyone that starts early and sticks with the training program has a successful show. If you come in midstream, you come in at the end, and recently somebody said, hey, I just plugged into the controller. How do I make this all work? That dog will not hunt. That's a problem. And it's also not entirely fair to the rest of the people that have committed a great deal of time. And suddenly you're asking in the ninth inning, how do I do this? Well, we're happy to tell you that in 2021. It's a tough expectation to jump into this at the very end. So starting early, being prepared to have a plan, and recognize that you're going to have some failures before you get to your successes. Anyone will tell you that's done this for years. Every year there are new challenges. I have them. I've got something miswired up there. I'm constantly having to tweak things, but I love the challenges of this hobby as much as I love the successes, because it keeps your brain moving. It keeps you focused and thinking. It also keeps you humble because, again, it's not a super easy hobby, but it is one of the best, and it gives back to your communities in spades.
Definitely. You definitely. Ron, why do people have Christmas lights?
You know, it's interesting. Christmas is such a celebration that means different things to different folks. Look, there are people out there that are atheists that love Christmas. There are people out there that are Christians and feel Christmas is only about Christ. And then there are people all in between. And I think what I love about it is the diversity, that it no longer represents one thing or another. It's sort of all encompassing of sharing and expressing an emotion. I think is the best way to describe it. When people are watching my show outside, it's nice to go out there and people will start clapping, or people will roll down their window and say, thank you for doing this. And I think it's a selfless act, and it's also somewhat of a selfish act. I don't know if you could be both at the same time, but if you think about the gratification of it, you're doing something that your neighbor doesn't. You get crazy cool points for doing something that looks really difficult. but at the same time, it really is giving of your heart back to the communities. They get to see something for free that they're not going to get to see, especially during a lockdown with COVID-19, and we're not able to go to the parks and able to have typical community with people too closely. So this is a great avenue to give them peace of mind. It's a little bit different here because, you know, we can have FM transmitters, and it makes it easy for people to stay in their cars with inclement weather, and it's convenient. In Europe, that's not the case. There are other laws that prohibit that. But, you know, if people are being sensible, there's no reason why they can't go out and stand 6 feet apart and enjoy the show.
That's it. That's it. Well, mine's actually playing now, so I'm away on holiday at the moment. But the gates open, the light show starts, and again, you know, thanks to the Elf group for you know, putting me on to how this all works and putting it all together. Not only have I sequenced it, but the gates open, everything, you know, works. Music starts playing. It's not loud. I've got 2 other questions for you though. You touched on this. How do your neighbours react? And I'll just say this: one of the questions I always get asked is, "Oh, I wouldn't want to live next door to you. What do your neighbours think of it?" My neighbours love it, and and they honestly do. It's you know, it's something that I've done. They're part of it as well. You know, they're talking about it. Everybody's talking about it. How about in the States? How does that work?
I think you have to reach out to your neighbors and the community and talk to them about it and let them know what you're doing and get some feedback. We have great neighbors all around us. The neighbors on each side of us, not so much. They're friends with each other, but there's some barriers, and we don't really talk that much, but they've never complained about the show. I think they enjoy the show. So I do try to be sensitive to their needs. The music is not as loud as it normally is this year because I think a lot of people are stressed out. And so I put my neighbors through this as the 5th year in a row. So I am cognizant that I need to be respectful. If there's an issue, I'll go talk to the neighbors and say, look, if it's too loud, you've got my number, let me know. No, it's been great. It's been great, Ron. Okay, fine. Perfect. So I do try to be respectful because it asks your neighbors a lot year over year. And so you have to do these temperature checks, take cookies, do something. Keith Wesley is a prime example of something you never want to have happen. And he's the lead developer for xLights. And he has a neighbor that, while Keith was on a Zoom call, this neighbor came over and just unleashed on him. I remember talking to him about this a couple of years ago at a Christmas expo. And he was really upset about this, and he wanted to shut his show down because he didn't want to cause any issues with his neighbor. And I said, well, have you talked to him? You know, just confront in a nice way. And I don't know what happened to that, but these are things we want to avoid. And if you just throw your lights up and say, look, it's my property, I own it, I'll do what I want, probably asking for trouble.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're quite right there. Keeping your neighbours happy and being key in the community for that kind of thing. The last question I've got is, why would people want to learn from you?
Oh my gosh, some yank from across the pond. Oh, it's just going to upset me. You know, it's an interesting question. I was probably the first person to be able to charge for services on the light side. So to get on one-on-one call with me outside of our Thursdays, there's a price for that. But in that one-on-one, you're probably going to learn more in an hour than you will in weeks or possibly months. And that's because my job is to quickly identify whether you're a kinesthetic, auditory, or visual type of learner. And if you're kinesthetic, I want you pushing the mouse while I coach you through the process. So every year I pick up 10 to 12 to 15 families that are starting brand new, and I take them through the process. And by the end of the year, they have a Halloween and or Christmas show, and they will have learned. People today sort of look for a light show in a box, which I don't believe exists. But people are looking for easier ways to get their show going. So now you have ready to run controllers, and you have sequences available, and you have a ton of support. But even with the support, sometimes that's not enough. People need to isolate, and adults are afraid to ask questions in front of other adults or be judged for not knowing something because they're an adult and they should know everything. And so some people like that private time and that the training. And so I provide that every year, and that's been very well received. But I also love working with people on the Thursdays. I have my own Thursday talk session, which is called Extreme Talk, every Thursday night at 6. It usually involves some wine and troubleshooting what could go wrong. But it's a lot of fun, and that usually lasts about 6.5 hours every Thursday. So at the end of Thursday, I'm pretty wiped out.
Yeah, I bet. Well, the answer should have been, surely, Ron, why would anyone want to learn from you? Is because you're Uncle xLights. You're the man. You really are the man. And you know, I don't think anyone can take that away from you. It's certainly been an absolute blast this last 10 months of learning and training and understanding. And you know, I'm very thankful to you and to that community for you know, holding my hand through this whole thing, really. And there were times where it might not have come off. You know, I may not have done it. It could have been, and even, you know, the last couple of weeks, people were. I get tons of people come past the house. They're looking, they're bringing their kids, they're bringing their families. Cars are stopping, cars are reversing, all that kind of stuff. And, you know, it's just, if you make someone smile, if you can make somebody laugh, that is a game changer. If they've got a comment, if, you know, you give someone something to talk about, it's an emotional roller coaster, regardless of what you do. But at least you're doing something rather than sitting there doing nothing.
Absolutely.
So thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you. This has been great.
And head over to xtremesequences.com for all your favorite sequences. Thanks, Ron.
Thanks, Sam.
Well, thank you again, Ron Howard, for that Q&A session. I really do appreciate you coming on and talking to me. If you want to see more and learn more about xLights and these sequences, and you want more videos from me, please hit that thumbs up button and the subscribe button to let me know that you care. Until next time, though, goodbye.